Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the It's the Pictures podcast. This is episode 174. I am your host, Max Colville, and welcome once again. Say hello to my co host, Evan Crean. Hi, Evan.
Hey Max, how's it going?
It's going all right. How's it going on at your neck of the woods?
Things are good here.
Today, we have one of Hollywood's great obsessions to talk about, Evan, and
hmm
at least over the last 15 or so years, it's been more apparent that this idea of the legacy sequel, returning to a classic franchise with the some of the original actors while also ushering in a new story. And I think this is a topic that has a lot of juice in it. We specifically
hmm
picked this one over the course of this last month in July. Here we had Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, and Twisters come out in the theaters, and their legacy sequels in their own rights.
hmm
We're going to focus on this in honor of those new releases. But before we get into that, we have some news.
Yes, we do. I've found out that the movie The Fall is going to be getting a 4K restoration and is going to be available to stream on Mubi, which I had no idea until a few minutes ago when I was looking at your show notes, and I was thrilled to read this news. The Fall is a movie that I really enjoyed. Somebody turned me on to it. I think so. The Fall came out in like 2006, and I think one of my friends showed it to me in maybe like 2008, 2009. So not that long after, and I really enjoyed it, and thought this is just a gorgeous film. Lee Pace is amazing, and that was kind of before a lot of people discovered Lee Pace and discovered how awesome he is. And it's just so like gorgeous to look at, so vividly shot in terms of cinematography, color palettes, costumes, and it's been unavailable for a very long time.
Yeah,
Like,
its Blu-ray release is famously out of print and very expensive to obtain.
yeah, it's very hard to acquire. I think like used copies of it are going for, upwards of like $80. And periodically will check back in to see if it's been re-released because I've been wanting to buy it. I never bought it. And even tweeting on a couple of recent occasions within the last few months, like, "Hey, when are we getting a new release of this movie? Because it's awesome and more people need to watch it." So this is thrilling news.
Yeah, this was directed by the director Tarzan Singh, and I first learned that there was actually a 4K restoration done because I guess it was announced that it was going to be part of the Locarno Film Festival, and that was
Mhm.
going to be the premiere of the print and everything like that. And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome! That means if a print exists, maybe we'll get to see it sometime soon." And it's wonderful that Mubi has gotten the rights to it, and I only hope that a physical release is in their plan somewhere down the line because
Yep.
this is one I would definitely love to own.
Yeah, me too, especially if I get it now before it goes out of print again.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of like what I'd compare it to. Like, there's movies like Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain, or like Tim Burton's Big Fish, where there's these people telling these stories, and they're kind of like
Yes.
changing to like fantasy stories. And The Fall has some of that because Lee Pace is like telling these stories.
Yeah, I think those films are good comparisons of the story within a story. Um, it just feels so epic in scope, the story that he's telling. It feels like a real adventure, like worthy of a story that you would be telling a kid that would be just sitting there in awe, and listening to it all.
Yeah, and one of the other things that makes people so much in love with it is just how gorgeous the cinematography is and everything. Tarzan Singh, I guess I looked it up and I didn't know this right away, but he actually directed Lady Gaga's music video for her song 911.
Hmm.
And if you watch that music video, you can like obviously see his touches in it and stuff. So if you've never seen it, then it might be worth checking out just to see um, what he was capable of doing in a music video sense. And I think he had a new film at TIFF like yet last year or the year before, and I didn't catch it. I heard it was pretty dark, but I'm glad that
Yeah.
he's back and there more people will be able to see this movie.
Yeah, it looks like maybe that one was called Dear Jassy.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, I don't think I've seen any of his other films. The Cell I know is one of his most famous ones. That movie has a real reputation. I'm just looking The Immortals, I don't think I saw that. Mirror Mirror, I definitely didn't see that. Self/Less slash Less from 2015. Did I see that one? I feel like I probably would remember it.
Yeah, he I feel like some of his movies are like that idea of abundance, not outside of like what Baz Luhrmann kind of does with his movies, but in a different
Mhm.
register.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. Although I feel like Baz Luhrmann often when I see his movies, they feel so much style over substance that
Yeah.
I'm just, "Ugh, really? Not this again?"
Um yeah, so that's wonderful. I think this fall is when it will be streaming according to press releases by Mubi. But we have some other news, and I debated putting this on the list of news here because I'm not necessarily excited for this movie, but uh, I was wondering how it would fit into our debate on legacy sequels, and
Ooh.
it was announced that Shrek 5 is going to happen in the imaginary year of 2026. um,
See if we make it that long.
yeah, the original cast is supposed to return, including Cameron Diaz and Eddie Murphy and Michael Myers. So we'll see what happens with that. But I guess I wonder if that's a legacy sequel or if it's just a sequel because it depends how you qualify what a legacy sequel
Mhm.
is, right, Evan?
Yeah. Seems like might just be a regular sequel, but I don't know. I've actually never seen any of the Shrek movies, and I feel like it's probably about time I got around to it considering how beloved they are. I
Oh
think that's a
well,
little bit my bad.
you have a child at home. I mean, maybe you'd come across them sometime soon.
Mhm. That's true. Yeah.
I from my personal background, I like the first two movies. I don't think I saw the third and fourth, but they're fun enough. And I think the first Shrek was really known for its like counter Disney kind of look because of its whole plot. Yeah, and then we have an update on the summer movie. Is this can we still get it? Consider it a game at this point?
I don't think so considering how much you're in the lead at this point.
So I updated it before we got on air because we are recording the weekend after Twisters has made its debut. It overachieved at the box office. Many pundits kind of imagined that it would be in the 40-50 range opening weekend. Even high estimated to put it at like 74 million. It ended up doing a little over 80 million.
Mhm.
It's
And
I
that's
guess
just opening weekend.
yeah, it's the biggest opening in domestically for a natural disaster movie. So that is quite something. Didn't really expect that, and I don't know how much of that is to do with just people wanting to see disaster movies, whether or not the star power of Glenn Powell is overwhelming.
It might be.
Certainly, he is going to be in a lot of our movies going forward, given the success of this one. But yeah, I think it's that Twisters in general is a feel good story because the director Minari did it, and we'll get into it a little bit more because I was able to see it over the weekend. So look forward to that at the end of the show. But otherwise, everything's kind of holding steady, Evan. I think one of the biggest surprises we didn't get to talk about when on our off week was that Neon's Long Legs really did incredible business.
How's it done so far?
Yeah, so it opened up upwards of 20 million on its
Oh,
opening
that's big
weekend.
for a
Yeah,
horror opening.
yeah, for Neon, it was I think their biggest opening weekend ever.
Damn.
Yeah, for the they they released some pretty decent movies. I think one of their most well known well, they do a lot of the Palm d'Or winners, and I think they ushered Parasite into its Best Picture win a few years
Mhm.
back. So uh, I think that their marketing campaign was very persuasive and got a lot of people's attention. It's a horror movie that's been likened to Seven from director Oz Perkins, who is, I guess, the son of the director, not the director, the actor in the Psycho movie.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
And this is like his like fourth or fifth movie he directed. He directed this movie called The Black Coat's Daughter or something a few years back that I know has some followers and people enjoy it. But this is certainly a more breakout film, and uh, this it stars the woman from It Follows.
Oh,
Um,
Micah Monroe. Love
Yep,
her.
and, co-starring, Nicolas Cage. Famously, they have not shown what Nicolas Cage looks like in any of the promotional photos. I guess you have to go see the movie and, to get scared about it. But yeah, from what I've heard, people, enjoy it. So, good victory for them and, that good marketing campaign for sure. But everything else
Mhm.
is holding up, even Despicable Me 2 and Inside Out. Well, Despicable Me 4 and Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2 actually just broke a record, Evan. It's now the highest grossing Pixar movie, I think, or like it's coming and it's also coming up on like Frozen 2's like
Wow.
all
That's
time like
impressive.
yeah, international and domestic. It's far exceeded anyone's expectations of how this would do at the box office. And certainly, if we were to do the competition over again, it's likely that that would be the first one picked. We are still waiting on Deadpool Wolverine, which will be opened by the time we talk next. This is
Mhm.
it's certainly a anticipated opening. Marvel dropped a final trailer the other day, and I guess there was even spoilers in that. And I was like, I'm not bothering to watch a final trailer. I'm already,
Same.
I'll go see this movie. Uh,
Yeah, me
so
too. I did not. I intentionally avoided the spoilers. I'll be seeing it and spoiling it next week on Spoiler Piece Theater, so there's that.
oh, good. So this is one that you're going out to see.
Yep. Mhm.
Alrighty. But yeah, so we're coming up to the end of the big box office summer, and we'll see how it goes with this competition.
I'm not
Um,
confident I'm gonna regain ground even if Deadpool and Wolverine and Borderlands somehow do big business.
right, like it seems to me like your biggest surprise was probably that Bad Boys movie, and that it outgrossed, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which surprised me.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think Fall Guy and obviously Maxine really hurt your chances. Um,
Yep.
but this is the first summer doing it, Evan. Maybe next summer when we do it, you'll be much more equipped.
Yeah, for sure. Do a lot more homework.
Okay, so that brings us into our legacy sequel talk, and certainly we've talked about a lot of these movies or this concept here on the It's the Pictures podcast throughout the years.
Mhm.
Um, they're some of the biggest movies around, this idea of taking a classic franchise that has lain dormant for a while and bringing it back, but not only bringing it back, but also having some of the original cast return to kind of usher in a new era of either heroes or protagonists. So they almost worked like side by side. I think of
Right.
like yeah, the one I think about the most, of course, is the Force Awakens, the Star Wars movie that uh, was supposed to usher in the new trilogy and everything, and they Lucasfilm and Disney went to great lengths to like advertise that Harrison Ford was coming back and Chewbacca and Princess Leia.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it felt like, they were really playing that up to be a true passing of the torch, which they really did across those 3 movies, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and, was it Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah. I think, like, that is the greatest showing of what these movies are, not necessarily the greatest examples, but, um,
Mhm.
chances are audiences are familiar with that, rebooted or sequelized Star Wars, trilogy that came out.
Right. Mhm.
But Evan, I was doing a little research before we talked, and some places credit the beginning of the Legacy sequel a little bit earlier than that. Um, Way
Yep.
back in like what 2010.
Oh, I saw somebody that said, the first Legacy sequel was 1986 Color of Money with, Paul Newman and, Tom Cruise.
Yeah, that would make sense. That movie, what famously had returning characters from
The
another,
Hustler.
yeah, the Paul Newman movie.
Yeah, which came out in 1961, I think? But that's what I read was the first, Legacy sequel. What was the one that you had heard about?
Yeah, so I didn't really know where I thought of them first, but I came across this Den of Geek article before we started recording, Evan, that gave a pretty good list of some of the at least more well-known legacy sequels, and it seems funny enough that the word legacy is in this title of this movie,
Oh, yep. I know which
and
one you're talking about.
and that is 2010's Tron Legacy, and that brought back the original star of Jeff Bridges and Bruce Boxleitner to the franchise, as well as showing off new characters played by Garrett Hedlund, Olivia Wilde, and Michael Sheen.
Mhm.
And you know, I was really excited about that movie. I'm like, oh, here you are. You're bringing back the original cast that had no business getting made, in my opinion, because Tron seemed like such a dormant franchise. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe they saw like and when I say they, I say Disney saw like, oh, we're gonna make a Tron light cycle ride at I think it's like Disney Tokyo, and they're like, it'd be really great if we have a movie to go with this ride.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like Tron has a pretty strong cult following for being so kind of ahead of its time in terms of its concepts and its special effects, which, you could argue how well they've aged, but they were definitely ambitious, bold, and imaginative. And so I think it made sense that they would wanna do a sequel when they had, more money and the ability to do way cooler special effects. So, I was also pretty psyched when Tron Legacy came out, and to be honest, I really enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. I think the visuals were spectacular, and I really liked the art direction in the movie, and I feel like a lot of people came down on it pretty hard. Were you did you like it, or were you one of the kind of people who didn't enjoy it?
I liked it. I think it's like really early technology with the face swap, like de aging, because
Oh,
they
yeah.
they do that with Jeff Bridges in the movie at the very beginning, and you're like, that kind of looks off, but it's a sample of where it would be going, and certainly another legacy sequel we'll talk about perhaps a little bit later attempted that in its prologue as well, and you could see how the technology has gotten better in some 14 years since Tron Legacy came out. I also really just love this movie, Evan, because they hired Daft Punk to do the soundtrack,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the soundtrack is amazing.
It is.
So I have a vinyl of the soundtrack that I like to play a lot, and then on top of that, I would just like dig to see a 4K release of this if it doesn't exist, or like I don't know, a chance to see it again. I know that there is finally the third movie in the franchise is going to come out, and like I think it's Tron Ares or something, and
Mm.
unfortunately, it stars Jared Leto.
Ugh,
But
gross.
I kind of still like Tron, so maybe that would make it so that Tron Legacy would get like another showing in the theaters. And I actually have a funny story,
Mhm.
Evan. I think like my wife and I went with a friend of ours to see Tron Legacy when it was opening at IMAX, and my friend had bought like a ticket like 2 seats over from us, and he was like trying to talk
Mhm.
to this guy to switch seats, and the guy was like, "I've waited 28 years to see this movie, and this is exactly dead center in the middle of the theater, and I am not moving."
Oh my god.
I was like, "Well, that's pretty wild, but you do you."
Yeah, that's oh my god, I hate people who are like that. Um, I actually got a chance to see Tron in 70 millimeter at, the Somerville Theater. That was a really great experience. I had a lot of fun
Oh,
at
that
that.
sounds awesome. Yeah, I think the Somerville still has a 70 millimeter program that they run sometimes, and I think
Yep.
like within the last few months they ran it, and unfortunately they didn't seem to have a lot of 70 millimeter prints come into town. They're always good for having Lawrence of Arabia in 2001, because I guess people locally own those prints, but
Mhm.
and those are certainly well worth seeing if you've never seen them in 70 millimeter. But I have had the privilege of seeing both of them at some point during their 70 millimeter runs over the years, and I was looking for something like a little bit more. I don't know, something that I hadn't had the chance to see.
Right, yeah, and in past 70 millimeter festivals, they've had some real interesting ones. Like, I've seen, The Dark Crystal in 70 millimeter, and that was amazing. I remember seeing It's a Mad, 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 Mad World in 70 millimeter, that was great. The Untouchables, that was an awesome 70 millimeter screening, and then
That's
I
cool.
think I'm trying to remember if I mix this up in my head. I'm pretty sure they showed Days of Thunder in 70 millimeter, and that was an amazing 70 millimeter show.
Yeah, I think like one of the ones that I regret not seeing is like they had this like really rare 70 millimeter showing of Sleeping Beauty, and I guess they were like, "Oh, Disney never lets us print out," and like you can see it. And I know we're on a 70 millimeter tangent, but it was funny. I was looking because like I guess like New York has a festival coming up soon, and I was like, oh, I would love to see Jacques Tati's Playtime in 70 millimeter, or they just like remastered John Ford's The Searchers in 70 millimeter. That was the other thing that I saw, and that's going to be doing a tour. So either one of those, I'd love to see in 70 millimeter.
Yeah, excuse the tangent, listeners. For the nerds out there, if you haven't had a chance to see a movie in 70 millimeter, it's a really interesting experience, and it's kind of hard to describe until you actually sit down in the theater and see a 70 millimeter movie in terms of visually, like, the scope of it is just so much grander and more epic, in terms of, like, the big, like, widescreen presentation of it. You kinda have to, like, see it to understand it, but when you do, you're like, "Oh, wow, this is a hell of a way to watch a movie."
Yeah, I'm kind of spoiled here in Rhode Island because I guess I live like 20 minutes away from one of the 15 or so IMAX theaters equipped to play like 70 millimeter IMAX, which is a different film stock. And they showed when they showed uh, Oppenheimer last year. I went twice because I was like, this is just awesome to see this movie projected in this format. And I think there's rumors that maybe like Interstellar will tour again, like for their anniversary this fall, and I'd love to see that again. But anyways, back to legacy sequels. Um, so right after that, I guess after Tron Legacy kind of like opened the doors, it was really in 2015 that we had a big rush of Legacy sequels. Evan.
Yeah, yeah, we getting a ton of them. I mean, like, so after Tron Legacy, we had Scream 4, which has also opened the door for several more Scream movies. But we also had Mad Max Fury Road in 2015, and that was that was definitely big business. But and then there was also Jurassic World in 2015. So we had Mad Max Fury Road, and Jurassic World kind of like opening the door back up on these kind of franchises that had, we hadn't seen entries from them since the 80s or the 90s.
Yeah, and I like to say like they're hit and miss. For every Creed you get, which stars Michael B. Jordan and had Sylvester Stallone reprising his role as Rocky. You get something like, I don't know, in the Independence Day Resurgence, which no one remembers, and uh, really feels like a flash in the pan.
Yeah, I never ended up seeing Independence Day Resurgence, but I heard it was so bad. I was like, I don't think I need to waste my time on it. I did see Mad Max Fury Road. That's an incredible sequel. I did see Jurassic World. I was not a fan of that, and I have not seen any of the follow-ups to it. Uh, which is what, like, they've made like two other Jurassic World movies at this point.
Yeah, and another
Um,
one is in production. I think like Scarlett Johansson is supposedly attached to
yeah.
a new Jurassic World movie.
Mhm, and I do love the Creed movies. I haven't seen the most recent one, but Creed and Creed 2 I thought were fantastic. And I liked Force Awakens when it came out in 2015. So, yeah, you're right, it was a busy year for legacy sequels, 2015.
Yeah, so now we're about 10 years removed from that. We've seen a lot more come out over the years to varying success. But Evan, what elements do you think really make a legacy sequel a legacy sequel?
Well, I think you've mentioned some of them. You gotta have, some returning cast members from the original films. That's definitely an indicator, although I don't think Mad Max Fury Road, did they have any returning cast members?
I think like maybe the lead imperator was a like not Imperator, like the main villain of Fury Road was maybe an actor that appeared in the original
Mhm,
Mad
yeah.
Max, but the idea was Mad Max was coming back, I guess.
Right, yeah, the same characters, I guess, in that instance, but yeah, usually, yeah, you wanna have some of the same actors coming back. Obviously, the most famous actors definitely helps, or the most beloved, actors from those original films, uh, and you wanna bring some new people, but also people who are compelling, like, for instance, in Creed, Michael B. Jordan is a fantastic actor, so he's a real value add as Adonis Creed. He can carry the weight of a movie on his own. Um, and then, like in Force Awakens, bringing in people like Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac, the list goes on, but it's bringing back those existing characters and actors, bringing new people in, but compelling new people, like good characters and good performances. And then ideally, you're pushing the story in a new, interesting direction. Like I think, for instance, I think in the Star Wars sequels, I think Last Jedi personally did it the best in terms of pushing the Star Wars franchise and story in different directions that it wasn't going in before. But I think that's definitely makes a good legacy sequel is to kind of push the envelope. Like do the things that people want and they're showing up for, but do some new things and kind of tread new territory.
Yeah, and one of the other things, Evan, and we're actually getting another one now. I just remembered in September, which is Beetlejuice, and
Oh yeah.
I think one another one of the elements here really important is the music. Certainly, some of the ones we mentioned have these really memorable scores, and when you have like John Williams doing Star Wars, that's easy to bring back, and people can like instantly go with that. I remember the first trailers for Jurassic World came on, and you were like, "Oh, I just need to hear the John Williams music with the Jurassic Park theme," and like
Yeah.
they kind of teased it throughout the trailer, and then like they finally give it to you, and you're like, "Yes, that's what what I was really waiting for." Or if you get like Creed with some Rocky music, or uh, some of these other legacy sequels that. Oh yeah, one that we will certainly talk more about, Top Gun Maverick, right? That one,
Right.
uh, Danger Zone and the Top Gun theme. Those are certainly things that bring audiences right back to what they remember.
Yeah, it's a great point about the score, and if you're not, using directly, paying homage to the original score with musical cues.
Right. Yeah, some kind of element. Like, I think not necessarily the legacy sequels, but like stuff like the Fantastic Beast movies made sure that they had cues to John Williams music, and to make sure that the people would have that mental kind of nod and say, "Oh yeah, that's part of the Harry Potter universe," and um, kind of continue with it.
Mhm.
Uh, what else? So we talked about some of the things that make these movies work outside of the actors and the music, and some really great new characters. There's also this idea that like you're bringing back a character that maybe had unfinished business.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
that's another big element here. Certainly,
Right.
uh, you look at Sylvester Stallone and Creed. It's like his character still had things left to do, or um, they kind of manufacture like a new story for Tom Cruise and Top Gun Maverick, which you know on paper looks kind of silly. It's like, how's this guy still in Top Gun all these years
Right.
later? But you know what? They found a way that he had unfinished business, of course, this
Mhm.
time with
Yep.
the son of Goose, which is his late co-pilot in the original Top Gun.
Right, yeah. I think probably a great example of this is, David Gordon Green's 2018 Halloween,
Yeah,
because they took Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and they bring her back, and they really hone in on her PTSD and the trauma that she's gone through as a result of being terrorized by Michael Myers. And I feel like they really spun it into a compelling, interesting story about trauma and just grappling with that for decades and how it, like, screwed up the rest of her life and her relationships with her daughter and granddaughter, and I thought that was just a really smart direction to take that movie in.
yeah, I really enjoyed the new 2018 Halloween. I have not visited the sequels to that one.
Ugh,
I've heard,
don't. They suck.
uh, but sequels and Halloweens, there's fewer good ones than bad ones, I'm sure.
Mm, yep.
But so we said like some of the things that make these movies work, Evan. But do you feel like legacy sequels really have just that first movie to make an impression? Because now that we've talked about a few of them, we could say like the first legacy sequels are the ones that kind of feel most substantial, whether it's The Force Awakens, if it's Jurassic World, uh, even Creed, I'd argue. There, it was okay to go back to the well that first time, but when you keep on going back to those characters, you don't get the same jump for the sequels coming back.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's diminishing returns for sure for continuing to go back to the well, as you're saying, with these franchises. Star Wars, I feel like, is big enough in scope, and there's so many different characters, there's so many different directions that I feel like there was enough story to pull 2 other movies out of it. I don't know about Jurassic World because I didn't see the follow-ups, but I suspect that they were really struggling. Um, and you and I talked about this, I think, in our last episode. One of the reasons why I feel like they don't work is that they're totally wrong about what worked about the original movie, which is that sense of wonder about the dinosaurs. And then, as I think you said, that they just want to keep making bigger and bigger dinosaurs, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
just not interesting. It's not new. There's just, it's not a reason to keep coming back to the franchise. So I think the ones that don't work, they're not saying anything new, they're not pulling the story in a different direction, or they're pulling it in a bad direction, which is, I feel like, what happened, with Halloween. The first one started out really strong, and then the second 2, just I don't even know what they were thinking with those because the stories were just terrible, just so bad. Um, Similar thing with, Glass. Um, I thought it was really interesting when M. Night Shyamalan did Split, which I was like, "Okay, this is cool." Like, this is a really spooky, scary story about this guy with these split personalities, and they got me really into it, and then, at the end, they kinda tease that this is connected to the Unbreakable universe, and I thought, "Okay, alright, M. Night, I'm on board with this. You're very hit or miss with me, but I'd be willing to see what else happens in this world," and then he just oh my god, Glass was so bad. I was so pumped to see it, and then I just thought, "Oh my god, this is terrible. This is just not a good direction to go."
Yeah, and so having seen it, Evan, do you I know Bruce Willis is still with us, but do you say like did you feel like seeing that movie like maybe that was apparent that was the end of his career, or did they manage to film it and make it look like he was really still all there?
It's been long enough since I've seen it that I don't remember his performance so well, but it didn't seem like it was noticeable that he had any type of cognitive decline, at
Mhm.
least to me. It seemed like maybe M. Night Shyamalan was going through some cognitive decline with some of the decision making. Um, but no, I don't recall Bruce Willis seeming, like his performance was different. Maybe I should rewatch some of
Yeah,
that to
I
see,
mean,
now that I know what I know about, um, what's been going on with him.
yeah, and maybe it's like I think one of Bruce Willis's last big blockbusters that we will probably ever see him in.
Mhm.
Um,
That's a bummer.
yeah,
On a side note, I love Bruce Willis, and I love his career, and I thought he was a very versatile actor, very funny, could do action really well, and it's really sad what's happened with him.
yeah, um, uh, yeah. I hope he's getting the care and love he needs. But yeah, I think going back to the well too often is something that definitely hurts these films. Evan, the big thing for the third Jurassic World movie to get people in the seats was that it was bringing back the three main cast members. So you had Sam Neill coming back and Laura
Mhm.
Dern and Jeff Goldblum, and it's just like. Yeah, I probably would have just wanted to see a movie with the three of them as opposed to seeing um Chris Pine and not Chris Pine, what's his name? Chris Pratt and
Yes.
um, Ron Howard's daughter there.
Oh, Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah, uh, they've always been more compelling to me than Chris Pratt.
Yeah, I agree. And I was contemplating seeing that one because it was bringing back the kinda core players who we've seen in many other things do, excellent work since the first Jurassic Park. Then I just never got around to seeing it.
Yeah, and I think like another thing that kind of makes these movies not work is maybe the leads being a little too old. We talked about the de-aging technology earlier with Tron Legacy, and last year's Indiana Jones and uh, the Dial of Destiny. They used that technology for a prologue to show like young Indiana Jones like getting into a battle with this particular Nazi,
Mhm.
and how years later he would see him again and they'd have that vendetta against each other. And I think that the technology is a little bit more compelling. It's weird to see Harrison Ford's old face with like Harrison Ford's voice from now. Like I think like
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
maybe they should have tried to like de-age his voice too if they were gonna go that far. But
It's true. His voice has gotten very gravelly.
so that's a little odd. But even though it was this idea of a legacy sequel, having Ford back, and maybe there were some thoughts that Phoebe Waller Bridge would maybe be the future of the franchise in some way. I think I guess people just weren't interested in seeing Harrison Ford do this role again. Maybe if they were burnt out from Crystal Skull, or they just the audience that would really be excited for these movies would probably be like, "Oh, I don't want to go see like an 80-year-old actor." try to do an action movie.
Uh, I mean, maybe. I mean, if you wrote a good enough Indiana Jones story, I'm always down as a huge fan of the franchise, as we've discussed. I think even last episode, that was a substantial, conversation point, so I
Yes.
won't revisit that, but I will say, I think I tend to get more excited about the new Indiana Jones video games that are coming out because it's a different medium, it's more of a chance to interact with the lore, and it's interactive. There's a lot of, like, problem solving and adventure stuff that just makes it really fun, and it's a I don't know, it's a good venue for, telling more stories in that world.
Do you like yourself a legacy sequel, Evan, or you feel like they're tired or kind of manipulative?
I generally like them. I mean, I think I'm probably a little bit pessimistic about them when they come out, but I'm definitely willing to give them a chance. Like, I've definitely enjoyed Top Gun Maverick quite a bit. Uh, I mentioned the Star Wars movies, Halloween, Creed, Tron Legacy, and I've even really liked the last 2 Scream movies, Scream 5 and 6. So, yeah, I like a legacy sequel. I'm open to them. I'm open to be impressed by them. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like the ones that really work, that really do stand out, like whether you have Creed or Mad Max Fury Road or Top Gun Maverick, and those films really did prized audiences and brought back these characters that we loved, or these worlds that we enjoyed, and brought them into a new era with not just tired ideas, but with a story and characters that really justified them coming back to this well. Too many times you
Mhm.
see them and they're like, oh well, we're gonna do this because we can. It was funny, Evan, even when I'm thinking about this now, with the inclusive Hugh Jackman and Deadpool Wolverine, is that a legacy sequel? I don't know. Certainly,
Mm.
they're using that idea of like, here's an actor who promised he'd never play a character again, and well, with enough money and convincing, he has come back to reprise the role.
Yep. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But I think you keyed in on what the most important thing is. I with legacy sequels, and that's to do something new, to have something new to say, to have a reason to be there. I know some people are just kind of poo-poo sequels in general and just like, "Oh, I'm so tired of sequels. It's so lame. It's just, it's not creative. Come up with new ideas." Like, I'm fine with sequels, but come to me with something new for the characters to do. Don't just make it, you know, because we could, like you were just saying. "Oh, we could," or, "Oh, this made some money, so let's see if we can squeeze more juice out of this lemon."
I think that was going to conclude our conversation on legacy sequels. A little bit shorter on our feature this week. I just think that we talked about legacy sequels, and if you haven't seen some of the ones that we really loved, like Creed or Mad Max Fury Road, um, Top Gun Maverick, those would be a wonderful movies that I think kind of even stand out on their own, removed from their history.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd agree with that.
Evan, do you have anything extra to add about legacy sequels?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered it. There's some good ones out there, there's some bad ones out there, and, everyone has an opportunity to do something new and fun and connect it to the history of the franchise, and it's easy to screw it up, and I think it's not always easy to do it well and to make it worth watching.
Right. So before we get into what we've been watching lately, we're going to share how you can find us. And you can find the podcast on X and on Blue Sky at It's the Pick Pod. You can email us at it's the pictures at gmail.com. We have a presence on Letterboxd. We're available to stream via YouTube, Spotify, Apple. music. If you like the show, please review us 5 stars. Help get us to more listeners.
Please
Um,
do. Yeah, give us a review.
yeah, give us a review. You can find me online at X at MH Colville. Also, I'm at Blue Sky. Just search for me, Max Colville there. Evan, where can I find you?
I'm all over social media. Let's see, I'm on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film real. And you can also find me over at Spoiler Peace Theater podcast.
Awesome. And if you haven't been looking at the It's a Picture Substack lately, caught up with some films that I've been seeing over the course of the last month. And I did a little article on a film called Seven Samurai.
Ooh.
Yes, I Seven Samurai is currently touring the nation to celebrate its 70th anniversary with a brand new 4K restoration. This is distributed by Janus Films ahead of what I would imagine a 4K physical release in November. They haven't announced that yet. I'm willing to bet that's when they're gonna release it. That's when Criterion, who is owned by Janus Films, normally releases some of their biggest films of the year for the holiday season. So this would make sense. As for Seven Samurai itself, well, if you've never seen it, there's no better time than now. It is a movie, yes, that is 70 years old, black and white, in Japanese with subtitles, and it is breezy, like 200 minutes long. uh, with a 10-minute intermission if you see it in theaters. So I know it's a hard sell, but it has some just fantastic and memorable performances. Uh, the second half of the movie is just like a continuous war sequence, and Kurosawa, the director, is one of the most famous Japanese directors of all time. Seven Samurai might be his masterpiece. So if you're looking to get into more world cinema, this is certainly a staple of the world cinema over the last century. And Evan, I've seen this movie maybe I'd say like 3 times now, 3, 4 times, and I always find something new when I see it, which is a testament to how good it is and how many different characters it follows. And certainly this time was no different. And even with the length of the movie, I was still really excited to sit there and enjoy this new restoration.
That's certainly a mark of a good movie. I think you know that I'm no fan of long movies, so it has to be really compelling for me to sit down and watch it. And I've never seen Seven Samurai, but it's definitely been on my list to check out.
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah, like I was looking when I was writing my write up, Evan, and the Sight and Sound like top 100 list came out 2 years ago in 2022, and um, I felt like a lot of the movies in the top 20 can be a little stuffy.
mhm.
Stuffy as in like either slow or really heavy and like not super action packed. I mean, like I love another Japanese director, Ozu, and Tokyo Story, but that is not an action-packed movie. That is more contemplative, and I think like Seven Samurai is easily one of the more accessible movies. It has romance, comedy, action. So if you haven't seen it and you are afraid that it'd be like one of those old stuffy movies or like maybe something laborious to sit through like Citizen Kane can be. Uh, just know that Seven Samurai is just as entertaining today as it was way back when.
Sweet. That's good to know. I mean, I liked Citizen Kane. It was not, difficult to sit through, so if you're saying, that this is even easier than that, then yeah, sign me up.
Oh, I just use that as an example because like well known as one of the favorites, and I know certainly when I talk to my wife and I'm like, "Oh, have you never seen Citizen Kane? It's one of the best movies ever." She just like rolls her eyes at me and just says like, "There's no way I'm ever sitting for that." But yeah, other than that, I saw an IFC Films release, Evan, called Ghostlight, and this one, I guess, is wrapping up its theatrical run before coming out on VOD later in July. And I'll be brief about this because I've been talking a lot now. But the movie premiered at Sundance, and I think it was the opening night film of the IFF Boston Film Festival this year. And it's about a family reeling through a tragedy, and the whole family's kind of spiraling. And one day in the afternoon, the patriarch of the family gets invited to take part in this like little local chapters rendition of Romeo and Juliet, and one of the leads in the play is the actress Dolly D. Leon, who was really fantastic in Triangle of Sadness. She's also in this Ghostlight movie. If you need an entry of a familiar face, uh, and through Romeo and Juliet, the family is able to find some solace. And I don't want to get into too many details about why that is, but it's truly a lovely movie, and if you get a chance to see it, it's kind of like undeniable when you watch it. You're like, oh, will I really like this? Or you don't know where it's totally going, but once it like clicks, you're like, oh god. So I liked that.
Cool.
And yeah, I'll briefly talk about Twisters. And it's funny, Evan, I didn't really think when I saw this that it felt too much like a legacy sequel, even though like this whole conversation kind of brought it up, because there's
Mhm.
not any real, there's like maybe two returning characters, but they're like maybe not returning characters, like actors in like really small parts. Like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, like I saw like one actor the other day who was like, oh, I'm the only actor who appeared in both Twister movies. And I was like, "Oh, I don't even remember like who you were in the original Twister, even though I just watched it like a week ago." Uh,
I watched it too, actually, funny enough for a spoiler piece.
so it's not like for lack of trying. Like Helen Hunt was famously wanting to make a sequel to Twister for a lot of years, and then I guess she wasn't invited back for this, or she just had no involvement in Twisters. And Bill Paxton famously passed away a bunch of years ago, and he was just terrific in the original Twister. It was kind of hard to bring them back. Philip Seymour Hoffman, of course, the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, he wasn't going to come back. What you have here is a pretty fun movie. The three stars that they pulled was Glenn Powell, yeah, Daisy Edgar Jones, and they had I think it's his name's Anthony Ramos. Is
Yeah,
that
Anthony Ramos. Yep.
Yeah, he I know him mostly from In the Heights, but he's been in a lot of movies recently, and the three of them are the main fuel of the Twisters movie. And Daisy is she's a young college student who has this idea that she's trying, and when she gets too close to the tornado and her experiment fails, some of her party unfortunately become deceased, and she kind of gives up chasing tornadoes until later in her life. 5 years later, she's asked to return to the scene, and when she returns, uh not only is she trying to track tornadoes, but she meets this guy who's a YouTube personality, played by Glenn Powell, who is kind of chasing tornadoes for fun. And it's kind of very similar to the plot of Twister. I guess all these years later, they can go ahead and rehash the same storyline, and for the most part, I enjoyed myself. I think like I'm sure you talked about this on Spoiler Piece, or your co-host did, Evan, but like the movie gets to a finale point, and you're like, oh yeah, like some of these characters are gonna like be together romantically now, and like the movie just says nope. And you're like, well, that kind of left me hanging. And, like I was like, oh, I'm all ready to be the curmudgeon person, say like it's all Gen Z's fault, and they don't want sex in movies anymore, so these movies are just like gonna be flat. And
Keeping it strictly platonic,
yeah,
folks.
and I was kind of disappointed with that, but yeah, I think just like It's funny, Evan, I don't think the original Twister is high art by any means, like, it's a fun
No.
it's just, like, a fun movie. Like, I think I saw someone online say it's, like, a five-star, three-star movie. Like
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. It's very watchable, but you can't and it's got a really fun ensemble, but it's, yeah, it's not one you wanna think too hard about. The science and the special effects look very dated.
yeah, and the first one is, like I saw someone else mention it, but, like, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's kinda it." It kinda feels like a His Girl Friday kinda reverse. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie with Rosalind Russell and, Cary Grant, but, like, she
Yes.
she, like, famously doesn't wanna be involved with him anymore and, like, wants to do her own thing, and she's like, "I wanna get divorced." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll do it later." Yeah, and at the end of the movie, they're like, "Oh, yeah, I guess we won't get divorced." Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, Twister definitely has that. Although Bill Paxton, on rewatch, I was realizing his character is a terrible fiance to his like he's terrible. Like he treats her so crappy and just leaves her behind so many times and is just completely unconcerned with what's going on with her. Like no wonder she leaves him.
Yeah, I was like, "Let's go in the middle of a tornado. Come on, honey."
Yeah, oh, you can drive by yourself and follow this convoy. Good luck. Bye now.
Yeah, no, but so yeah, you rewatched it for spoiler piece, the original.
Yeah, I rewatched, the original, and so, yeah, I like you said, it's not high art. It's a fun watch. I enjoyed rewatching it. It was a good time, very watchable, um, but not great.
All right, I've been talking for a long time now, Evan. I'd like to hear what you've been watching.
Sure. So most recently, I finally got around to watching Loki season 2. I had seen Loki ages ago, and Loki season 2 came and went. And I thought, okay, I'm pretty sure I should watch season 2 because I think there's some type of connection to Deadpool Wolverine with the whole like time variance authority. Maybe I should, you know, catch up there.
Hmm.
And overall, I have to say I was pretty disappointed by season 2. I love the cast. I love that Ke Kwan is one of the
Yeah.
central people in it. He's fantastic. I love that Eugene Cordero also has a bigger role, and there's part of this kind of like crew of people that are all kind of working together to try and figure out what's going on. That part of it is fun, and I think Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson actually have a really great rapport as these characters, and I think I very much enjoyed watching the characters interact, but I just felt like the story didn't go anywhere interesting, and at the end, when I finished the finale, I thought, "So what was the point of all this? Like, why did I sit here and watch these 6 episodes?" I felt like I came away feeling like the entire exercise was pointless, and also, there's just a lot of, like, time travel mumbo jumbo and stuff that just does not make any sense throughout the the show. Did you see season 2 of Loki, or did you watch either season?
I watched a few episodes of the first season, and like, yeah, I like Tom Hiddleston as Loki, but I don't know. The only Marvel show that I finished from beginning to end was, unsurprisingly, maybe is WandaVision.
Oh, that's a good one
Because
if
that
you're
was
gonna
the
watch any.
yeah, that was the first one out of the gate, and I feel like it was kind of clever with what it did, as opposed to like a lot of these other ones. I was like, I'd get excited that they were coming out, but then like I'd kind of fall off. Like I think I watched like an episode or two of Moon Knight, and I was like, I didn't watch the rest of that, and
Mm, I liked Moon Knight overall.
but yeah, I guess everyone in the cast minus Jonathan Majors, right?
Right, yeah, that's awkward watching that in retrospect, knowing what was going on in real life with Jonathan Majors, but, yeah, was a bit disappointing, and obviously I mentioned that I watched the original, Twister, and, I also watched a movie for a spoiler piece last week called Oddity, um, which is a horror movie that I've been kinda taking a break from horror movies lately, and so I actually wanted to see this one because it was, written and directed by Damian McCarthy, who did, this movie called Caveat from a few years back,
Hmm.
which was a very creepy horror movie. It was the Caveat was about this guy who takes this job to, like, look after this, uh psychologically troubled woman in an abandoned house, which sits on an isolated island, and it's totally just like a descent into madness and super creepy and atmospheric. And so, Oddity was also very creepy and atmospheric. So I really dug it. The plot of this one is that there's this woman and her husband are fixing up this house, this kind of remote house, and I think it's the Irish countryside. She is murdered, and a year later, her sister, who is her twin sister, she's blind and she's psychic, has showed up at the house with the husband and his new girlfriend. And she's pretty sure that her sister met an unsavory end. And so she's there to kind of like, ruffle some feathers and see
Yeah.
what's going on there. And yeah, it's oof, very atmospheric, very creepy. I'm not sure I loved how it ended. Um, but overall, it's just a lot of moments where you're just sitting there on edge because you're just not sure what's gonna happen next. And, also just really well shot. Just really, really gorgeous cinematography and lots of really textured shots. Like, so many frames where you're looking at it and there's just so much depth to what you're looking at. And, yeah, I dug Oddity. I would recommend it.
I remember like when I was first starting to watch horror movies when I was younger, Evan, and like one of the ones that stuck out to me was Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell, and I was
Mhm.
like, I was just I wasn't used to watching movies that like purposefully had like a bleak ending, and like because I wasn't used to like horror movies, and I feel like you got to be on board with the idea that like these people are in like really bad situations and they might not come out of it like really happy, and you might not get that smiley happy ending. um
Mhm.
and that's certainly something that like I don't know, you kind of go into horror expecting once you're attuned to it.
Yeah, exactly, and this one definitely has a bleak ending, that's for sure. I think that's part of what I didn't like about it. I'm not gonna get into it because 'cause I'm not gonna spoil it, but yeah, that's definitely an adjustment is when you're watching horror movies and knowing more often than not, you're not gonna end up on a happy note. But I think for me, when I'm watching a horror movie, if it doesn't necessarily end on a happy note, I'm okay with that. I just if there's somebody bad in the movie, I just want to see them get some, like, nasty comeuppance. That's that's what I want. If we got a real terrible villain, like, let's see them get some real justice.
Yeah, like they better like get what's coming to them, otherwise, then I'm not on board.
Right, otherwise I'm gonna be annoyed.
Alrighty, I think that wraps up our episode of It's the Pictures podcast. I want to thank you, Evan, for joining me as always.
Oh, thanks for having me and, for being such a great co-host.
Thank you. And I want to extend out to our listeners. Thank you for listening. And I hope you've enjoyed this most recent episode. And join us again in another 2 weeks' time. And we'll have another episode scheduled for you to listen to and enjoy.
Catch you later, folks.
All right. Bye.